There is a drawer in nearly every old house in this country, and you know the one I mean. The junk drawer, folks called it, though it was never really junk at all. It was where the odd and useful things lived, the little tools and gadgets that did 100 small jobs around the home. And if you and I were to slide that drawer open right now and lay each thing out on the kitchen table one at a time, I promise you something. A young person standing beside us would pick up half of them, turn them over in their hands, and have not the faintest idea what they were holding, not a clue. They would look at you the way you might look at a tool from ancient Rome. And that, when you sit with it for a moment, is a strange and tender thing, because these were not rare objects. They were everywhere. They were ordinary. They were the furniture of daily life, the things your hands knew so well you never had to look at them, and now they have all but vanished, slipped quietly out of the world while we were busy living in it. So pour yourself a cup of something warm, find your chair, the good one, the one that fits you, and settle in with me a while, because tonight we are going to open that drawer together, and a few cupboards and closets besides, and we are going to take out 15 everyday objects from before 1975 that the young folks today simply would not recognize. 15 things you grew up with, things your hands remember, things that carried a sound and a weight and a smell that I will bet you can still call up if you close your eyes. We will go through them one at a time, slow and easy, and I want you to play a little game with me as we go. Before I name each one, see if you can guess it from the first clue. See how many you remember. I suspect you will surprise yourself. And while we settle in, do me one small kindness. Down in the comments, tell me where you grew up, the town or the county or just the part of the country, and tell me which of these old things sat in your house. I read every one, and there is something about hearing where a person comes from that makes this whole thing feel like a front porch full of old friends. I would truly love to know. Now, I will tell you this right up front so you have something to watch for. Near the end of our list there is one object, just one, that almost nobody remembers anymore. Not the rotary phone, not the washboard, those you will all know. This is something quieter than that. Something that lived in the corner of the room and did its job so faithfully that we forgot it was even there until one day it was gone for good and no one marked the passing. I will get to it, I promise. But not yet. Let it sit in the back of your mind as we go. We have 14 others to handle first. So let us open the drawer. Let us begin. Number 1. Here is your first clue. It sat on a little table or hung on the wall, and it had a face like a clock, and you put your finger in it, and you went around and around, and it took a good long while to call your sister 3 states away. You have got it already, of course. The rotary telephone. Heavy as a brick, the good ones made of solid bakelite or steel and black, or that pale harvest gold or avocado green that every kitchen seemed to have. And the dial, oh, the dial. You would put your finger in the little hole over the number, pull it all the way around to the silver stop, and let it spin back on its own with that long mechanical whir before you could dial the next one. And if your sweetheart's number had a 9 in it, or worse, 2 9s, you learned patience whether you wanted to or not. There was a weight to making a call back then. You sat down to do it. You did not wander the house. And there was something honest in that telephone, too. It never needed charging, it never needed an update. When the power went out in the whole neighborhood, that phone still worked, still had a dial tone, because the line itself carried what little current it needed. Try that with a slab of glass in your pocket today. The rotary phone asked you to slow down and be where you were, and I am not sure that was the worst thing in the world. Number 2, next clue. It lived in the freezer. It was made of metal, cold enough to stick to your fingers, and it had a handle in the middle that you pulled up with a great cracking sound. The metal ice cube tray, the aluminum one with the lever. You filled it at the tap, set it level in the freezer, and waited, and when you wanted ice, you ran it under the water a second, and then you pulled up that lever and the whole tray gave that loud crack and snap as the cubes broke loose all at once. And half the time 1 or 2 cubes leapt right out onto the floor and skittered under the icebox. Now here is your takeaway, and it is a good one. Those metal trays worked better than the flimsy plastic ones we use now. The metal conducted the cold faster, so the ice froze quicker, and that lever popped the cubes loose clean every time. Folks pay good money for those old metal trays today, hunting them down at the antique stores, because some clever soul rediscovered that the old way simply worked better. It usually did. Number 3. Here is the clue. It sat on the back of the stove, it gurgled and bubbled and popped, and there was a little glass dome on the very top where you could watch the whole thing happen. The percolator coffee pot. Before the drip machine, before the pods, before the $5 cup handed through a window, there was the percolator, and there was that sound. That cheerful, bubbling perk, 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 slow at first and then faster, and that little glass knob on the lid turning from clear to pale to deep rich brown as the coffee grew strong, and the smell of percolator coffee pulling the whole sleepy house toward the kitchen on a cold morning. That is a smell that lives in the bones of anyone who grew up with it. The percolator made a strong, hot, honest cup. You can still buy them, the stovetop kind, and a great many folks have gone back to them because they make wonderful coffee. They never break down the way the fancy machines do, and they will perk you a pot over a campfire or a gas flame when the power is out and the electric machine is just a paperweight on the counter. Number 4. Clue. It stood out on the back porch or down in the cellar. It had a tub and 2 rubber rollers on the top, and Monday was its day. The wringer, washer, and beside it, very often, the humble washboard, that ridged sheet of glass or zinc in a wooden frame. Now, wash day was a whole day, make no mistake. Your mother or your grandmother would fill that tub, scrub the worst spots by hand on the washboard, knuckles working up and down that ridged surface, and then feed each piece through the wringer, those 2 rollers that squeeze the water out with a turn of the crank. And you learned young to keep your fingers clear of that wringer because it did not know the difference between a shirt and a hand. It was hard work. I will not pretend it wasn't. But there is a takeaway here that surprises people. That washboard still works, and works well, on a delicate thing you do not trust to the machine, or on a camping trip, or when the washer breaks down on a Sunday and the repairman cannot come till Thursday, and the wringer washer used a fraction of the water and the power that we pour into laundry today. The old way was harder on the back, but it was gentler on the bill, and gentler on the clothes, too, which lasted years longer than ours seemed to. Number 5. The clue. It sat on top of the television set. It had 2 long silver poles that you pushed and pulled and bent and angled, and on a bad night you held one of them and stood very, very still. The rabbit ears, the television antenna. Anyone who grew up before cable knows this dance well. The picture would go fuzzy, snow all over the screen, and somebody, usually the youngest in the room, would be sent to adjust the rabbit ears. A little to the left. No, back. Now hold it right there, don't move. And there you would stand, arm out like a statue, while the rest of the family enjoyed a perfectly clear picture that vanished the instant you let go. Folks wrapped them in aluminum foil to pull in a far station. They taped them at just the right angle and forbade anyone from touching them. 3 channels, maybe 4 if the weather was right, and the whole family watching the same thing together in one room, which is a kind of togetherness we have quietly lost in the age of everyone staring at their own little screen. And let me pause right here for just a moment, because you have been so kind to sit with me this far. If these old things are stirring something in you, if you are smiling and nodding and saying, yes, we had that, we had every one of those, then I would be so glad to have you here with us regularly. Just tap that subscribe button, no fuss at all, and you will not miss the next story. We are a gentle bunch here, folks who remember, folks who believe the old things had a worth that did not disappear just because the world moved on. You belong with us. Now, back to the drawer. Number 6. Here is your clue. It sat in a little insulated box on your front porch, and early in the morning, before you were even up, a man came and filled it and left it cold for you. The milk box. And the milkman who filled it There was a small metal or wooden box right there by the front door, and in the dark of the early morning you would hear the clink of glass bottles, the whir of the milk truck, the footsteps on the porch. He took away your empties, washed and waiting, and left you fresh, cold bottles with the cream risen to the top. He knew your name. He knew if you had company coming and needed an extra quart. If you were going on vacation, you left a note in the box, and the milk stopped till you got back. It was a quiet, daily kindness, a face you could count on, a service so personal it seems almost like a fairy tale now. We traded that knock on the porch for a refrigerated aisle under buzzing lights, and they told us it was progress, and maybe in some ways it was. But I will tell you, there are mornings I still half listen for the clink of those bottles. Number 7. The clue this time is a small wooden thing, shaped like an egg or a mushroom, that lived in the sewing basket, and it had nothing whatsoever to do with cooking. The darning egg. Now here is one the young folks would never guess in 100 years, because the very idea behind it has all but vanished. When a sock wore through at the heel or the toe, you did not throw it away. The thought would never have crossed your grandmother's mind. She slipped that smooth wooden egg inside the sock to stretch the hole tight and round, and then she darned it, weaving the needle and thread back and forth, over and under, until the hole was filled in with a neat little woven patch, and that sock went back into the drawer good as new. The takeaway here is bigger than a sock. It is a whole way of seeing the world. Things were mended, not discarded. A hole was not the end of a thing, just a moment in its long life. And a household that mends is a household that is always, quietly, a little bit richer than its neighbors, because so very little ever has to be bought twice. Number 8. Here is your clue. It clamped to the edge of the kitchen table or counter, it had a crank handle, and you fed meat into the top and turned, and out the front it came in long ribbons. The hand-crank meat grinder, cast iron, heavy, bolted or clamped tight to the table edge, and on the day your grandmother made her own sausage, or ground the leftover Sunday roast into hash, or made a meatloaf from scratch, out it came. You fed the chunks in the top, turned that crank, and the ground meat curled out the plate in front into the waiting bowl. The children took turns at the crank, because turning it was a kind of fun, at least for the first few minutes. It needed no electricity, and it never burned out a motor, and it ground exactly what you put in it. No fillers, no mystery. Plenty of cooks have gone right back to them, because freshly ground meat is better meat, and you know precisely what is in it. The old crank grinder will outlive every plastic gadget on the counter, and it asks for nothing but a little muscle. Number 9. The clue. It was long and flat, made of wood or bamboo or fine ivory, covered in tiny numbers, with a piece that slid back and forth in the middle, and it could do arithmetic that would make your head spin. The slide rule. Now this one carries a special weight, because the men who sent the rockets to the moon did it with these. No calculator, no computer in their pocket, just a slide rule and a sharp pencil and a sharper mind. Every engineer wore one on his belt in a leather case like a sidearm. You lined up the numbers on the sliding scales, read the answer off where they met, and you learned to estimate, to know roughly what the answer ought to be before you ever found it. There is a takeaway buried in that. The slide rule made you understand the numbers, not just trust a screen to spit them out. It taught a kind of thinking we have largely handed over to machines. The young person today would have no earthly idea what to do with one, and yet it carried us to the moon. Let that sit with you a moment. Number 10. Here is your clue. They were little stamps. You got them at the store with your purchases. You licked them and stuck them into books, and when you had enough books, you took them down to a special shop and traded them for a toaster or a lamp. The green stamps, the S and H green stamps, and the other kinds too. Every time you bought groceries or filled up the car, the clerk handed you a strip of stamps based on what you spent, and you took them home, and the children loved this part. The children licked them and pressed them into the little books. and it took ever so many books to fill, but slowly they piled up, and then you sat down with a catalog and dreamed, and you took your full books to the redemption center and walked out with something for the house that you had earned a lick at a time. It was the rewards program of its day, but it was tangible, something you could hold and count and lick and paste, a family project at the kitchen table, and there was a satisfaction in it that a point total on a screen will never quite match. Now we are past the halfway mark, and you are doing wonderfully, and I will bet you have remembered every single one so far. But hold on, because we are getting closer to that one quiet object I promised you at the start, the one almost nobody remembers. It is coming. A few more first. Number 11. The clue. It was small enough to fit in your shirt pocket, it had a little dial and a tiny speaker, and for a whole generation of young people it was the sound of freedom on a summer night. The transistor radio. Before this, the radio was a great piece of furniture that the whole family gathered around in the parlor. And then, almost overnight, the radio got small enough to carry, to slip in your pocket, to take to the beach, to hide under your pillow at night with the volume way down low so you could listen to the ball game or the music your parents did not quite approve of. It ran on a little 9-volt battery, and it had that tinny, wonderful sound, and it was the first time music belonged to you, just you, wherever you went. That little radio changed the world more than folks give it credit for. And here is a quiet takeaway. A simple transistor radio costs next to nothing and runs for ages on one battery, and when the storm comes and the power fails and the cell towers go quiet, that humble little radio still pulls the news right out of the air. There is wisdom in keeping one in the drawer. And let me stop again just for a breath, because if you have made it this far with me, you and I are kindred spirits, the kind of folks who know that the old things mattered. If you have not yet, do an old fellow a kindness and tap that subscribe button so we can sit together like this again soon. It costs you nothing, and it tells me you would like more of these quiet evenings of remembering. Now, let us get to it, because the next one I am especially fond of. Number 12. Here is your clue. It hung on a string or lived in the drawer. It was a flat little piece of metal, one end pointed, one end shaped to hook, and it opened both your soda and your dad's beer, and it had a wonderful name. The church key. That is what everyone called it, the church key, that flat steel bottle opener with the pointed end on one side for punching 2 triangle holes in the top of a can, and the rounded hooked end on the other for prying the cap off a bottle. Before pull tabs, before twist-offs, this was how you got into nearly everything. You punched one hole to pour and one hole to let the air in, and you learned that quick, because if you only punched one, the drink came out in glugs and spat all over you. Every kitchen drawer had one. Every picnic basket. It never broke, never needed batteries, never wore out, and a good one will still open a bottle today exactly as well as it did 60 years ago. Simple, honest steel, doing one job perfectly. They do not make so many things that way anymore. Number 13. The clue. It was thin paper, dark blue or black on one side, and you laid it between 2 sheets in the typewriter, and like magic you got 2 copies at once. The carbon paper. Now this one truly is a ghost, because the very need for it has evaporated. Before the photocopier sat in every office, before you could print 100 copies with the touch of a button, if you wanted a copy of a letter or a form, you slid a sheet of carbon paper, inky side down, between 2 clean sheets, rolled all 3 into the typewriter together, and every key you struck pressed through and made a duplicate on the bottom sheet. Your fingers got smudged with that blue-black ink, and you could not fix a mistake easily, so you typed with care, you thought, before you struck the key. The very phrase we still use to copy someone, to CC them on a note, comes straight from that carbon copy. The thing is gone, but its ghost lives on in the words we use every single day, and most folks have no idea why. Number 14. Here is your clue. Before the refrigerator hummed in the corner, this stood in its place, made of wood and tin, and a strong man came twice a week with a great dripping block held in iron tongs over his shoulder, the icebox. And the iceman who kept it filled. This was not a refrigerator. There was no motor, no electricity, no hum. It was a wooden cabinet lined with tin and insulated with cork or sawdust, and it kept your food cold with a great block of real ice that sat in the top compartment. And the iceman came, 2 or 3 times a week, hauling those blocks with his iron tongs, his leather shoulder pads soaked through, and he would chip your block to size and carry it in and set it in the box. The children chased that wagon in the summer heat, begging for the chips of ice that flew off as he chipped, and there was nothing in all the world so good as a stolen sliver of ice on a hot July afternoon, and underneath the icebox sat a pan to catch the melt, and woe to the household that forgot to empty it, for it would overflow across the kitchen floor. We forget sometimes that cold itself, just keeping food cold, was once a thing that had to be carried to your door on a man's strong shoulder. And now, here it is, the one I told you to watch for all the way back at the start, the quiet one, the one almost nobody remembers, because it never made a sound you would notice, and it lived in the corner doing its faithful work until the day it simply was not needed anymore, and no one thought to say goodbye. Number 15. The television test pattern. Now, you younger folks who happen to be listening, lean in, because this is one your parents may not even have told you about. There was a time when the television did not run all day and all night. It could not. The station signed off. Late at night, after the last show and the national anthem played over pictures of the flag, the broadcast simply ended, and what came up on the screen was the test pattern. Often it was a picture of an Indian head in a circle, surrounded by lines and shapes and little boxes, sitting there silent and still, hour after hour, through the small hours of the night, with nothing but a steady tone to keep it company. It was there so the repairman and the station could line up the picture just right, the focus, the brightness, the centering. But for a child who could not sleep, or a soul up late and lonely, that test pattern was a strange companion in the dark. It meant the day was truly over. It meant the world had gone to bed and you were the only one still awake. And here is why it has vanished so completely, why it is the one almost nobody remembers. The very idea behind it is gone. Television never stops now. It runs every hour of every day, 1,000 channels, never a moment of silence, never that gentle signal that said, "That is enough for today, go to sleep, the rest will keep till morning." The test pattern was the television saying goodnight. And somewhere along the way the world stopped saying goodnight and started running all night long, and I am not entirely sure we are the better for it. That quiet, still picture in the dark knew something we have forgotten. That everything, even the television, even you, needs to rest. And so there they are. 15 ordinary things, the furniture of a whole way of living, slipped quietly out of the world. The heavy phone and the metal ice tray and the bubbling percolator. The wringer washer and the rabbit ears and the milk box on the porch. The darning egg and the crank grinder and the slide rule that flew us to the moon. The green stamps and the little transistor radio. The church key and the carbon paper and the dripping block of the iceman. And that silent test pattern glowing in the dark, saying goodnight to a world that does not sleep anymore. But I do not want to leave you feeling that these things are simply lost, gone for good, with nothing to show for them. Because that is not quite true, and here is the part I most want you to carry away. Every one of these objects was made to last, made to be mended, made to do its honest job without asking for much in return. They did not need charging or updating. They did not break in a year and get thrown in the landfill. The metal ice tray, the percolator, the church key, the crank grinder, the transistor radio, many of these still work today, right now, better and cheaper than the things that replaced them. And folks are quietly rediscovering that very fact and bringing them back, one kitchen at a time. And the deeper things behind them, the patience of the dial, the togetherness around the one television, the thrift of the darned sock, the quiet of the world saying goodnight, those things are not gone either. They are just waiting, like that test pattern in the dark, for us to remember them and turn them back on. You know, I have thought a good deal about that junk drawer and all the drawers and porches and cellars like it in all the houses across this country, and what strikes me is not really the objects themselves, it is the hands that used them. The mother feeding a shirt through the wringer on a Monday morning, the father lining up the numbers on his slide rule, the child licking a green stamp at the kitchen table, or holding the rabbit ears stock still so the family could see the show, or chasing the ice wagon down a hot summer street. These things were the props in the great quiet play of ordinary life, and they held that life together in a way that is hard to put into words. They asked us to slow down, to pay attention, to mend what was broken and waste nothing and gather in one room together. They were patient with us. And maybe, just maybe, that is the real thing the young folks would not recognize. Not the objects, the pace, the carefulness, the way a life was lived with your own two hands. So here is what I would love from you tonight. Down in the comments, tell me this one thing. Of all 15, which object do you miss the most, and why? Not just which one you remember, but which one you would actually want back in your house tomorrow, sitting on the counter or hanging in the drawer, and tell me the memory that comes with it. Maybe it is the smell of the percolator on a cold morning. Maybe it is the clink of the milkman's bottles before dawn. Maybe it is that silent test pattern keeping you company on a sleepless night. Share it, because somebody else reading needs to remember it too, and together we can keep these old things from disappearing for good. I read every single comment, and I treasure them more than you know. And if you have enjoyed opening this old drawer with me tonight, if it brought back the weight of that telephone in your hand, or the crack of the ice tray, or the bubbling of the coffee on the stove, then do an old fellow a favor and subscribe, so we can do this again soon. Next time, I want to take you out to the garage and the tool shed, and show you the everyday tools and contraptions that every man and woman knew how to use before 1975, the ones that fixed and built and mended a whole household, and that hardly a soul under 40 could name today. You will not want to miss it. We will keep the old wisdom alive together, you and I, one story at a time, one drawer at a time. So pour yourself one more cup, hold your people a little closer, and remember that the simplest things, the ones with no screen and no battery and no price tag worth speaking of, were very often the ones that served us best. Take good care of yourself, and I will see you next time.